And we're live.
Yes, sir. We're back at it.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. What's going on, people?
All right, let's get into it, man. So,
yeah, absolutely.
First episode, diet. Ex-carnivore and ex-vegan.
Super important, I think.
Right? And then met in the middle somehow.
Absolutely.
So, I wanted to ask you, dude, when you first went on the journey of going vegan, like what set that off for you? Do you remember?
Yeah, I do actually.
All
I
right.
think it's a great question. And ultimately, for me, it was my health and my skin. I was wondering why, as a young late teen, about to go into their 20s, while I had so many breakouts and why I couldn't control my skin and what was kind of happening. And of course, there's a little bit of that self-consciousness.
Right.
You're going into the world, you're starting to meet girls and form relationships with other friends too, and just in general in social settings and being out and about. And I just wondered why I was having so many breakouts. And I was trying everything under the sun, go to dermatologists, get antibiotics, take this cream, take that cream, take this pill. Yeah, I'm asking them, how long should I take these things for? And they're just telling me pretty much indefinitely. Oof. And that's a hard pill to swallow, no pun intended, but I kept asking them as well, does it matter what I'm eating? And every time they tell me no. No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Fast forward all these years later, now if you go to the dermatologist and ask them, does it matter what you're eating? They'll tell you absolutely it does. So that's kind of what sparked my interest going forward. And I also bought a book and it was like an acne no more book. And the guy in there was really hardcore. Like he wanted you to be like one of those raw vegans.
Really? Wow.
And when I was just jumping into it, it was very hard. Like I'm reading this book and I'm just shocked by all the things he's telling me not to eat. No red meat right off the bat. So I'm like, okay, I'm starting every shift going in to when I was working at the restaurant, starting every shift like with the grill.
Oh yeah.
Couple burgers, getting it going, about to head into work, be fueled up, and pretty much everything that they were telling me in that book was a shock to my system and the way I was brought up. I was brought up like a traditional American,
right,
going
on
to
the
fast
American
food
diet.
joints. Yeah.
Oh, wow. So you make the switch off the book and then immediately you have to start feeling better. Skin's clearing up because it's like you're coming from the worst diet ever.
And I think that was the thing that got me stuck in it. I don't even want to say stuck because I appreciate all the years I was vegan. And I really do think it made good life choices for me and really opened my eyes to what I was eating and how to prepare my own food. But yeah, it was mostly just that big switch from eating processed food and candy every night to now eating, pretty much all plant-based, meals. It was great. It was great. I felt really good right away. And obviously that kind of led me down that path to thinking, wow, this is the truth. This is really what
the confirmation bias.
Yeah, the confirmation bias. And I started hanging out with other people that also were on the same path. And I was roommates with Alex Caceres for a while, which he was great as far as like someone that was strict about their diet. He didn't waver. And I always appreciated that about him is he had that mental fortitude to just stay steady as an arrow down the path, which I wavered a lot, especially at first. I wavered a lot off the diet. It was really hard. Really hard.
What was the longest period you went where you were just mega strict? You didn't have meat for how much time passed? Do you think you managed to make it?
I think I made it a solid 4 years without meat. It was the dairy that I kept going back to. I kept giving into these little fixes for milkshakes or peanut butter M&Ms. And now that I've kind of gone through all the motions of it, I really think that the processed food and the sugar is kind of the worst thing for you.
Oh yeah. I found the same on my little journey, but yeah. And then what sticks out to me too when I started mine is just you're searching for answers. You go on the internet, you find inevitably exactly what you're looking for, confirming your bias, and then you're like, yeah, because I went through the vegan thing too. At one point I was cooking, remember? I was like showing videos like, dude, I'm trying this vegan thing, I'm going hardcore on it. And then I'm like watching those documentaries that are like, yeah, vegans this, vegan heart health, all this stuff. Like, and then it's just coming off an American diet, you can almost go to anything and it'll be better.
Exactly.
Just cut out the sugars, cut out those processed carbs. And those are the two most popular things that everybody eats.
Exactly.
Dude.
What was your main goal for switching?
So when I got into carnivore, so even before carnivore, I went through this whole vegetarian, then like vegan, then carnivore. So I was initially starting like, I started working out and I was like, how do I look better? Everybody wants to look better. And I'm like, okay, you start reading, well, sugar's bad for you. Okay, great. So let me start cutting out sugar. Then you get into the fad diets. You start reading like, do this to get shredded, do this to get jacked. So I'm like going through this list of crap, and I'm like learning some good things along the way, picking up bad stuff along the way. So, you start reading about like intermittent fasting, and then you start reading about macros, count your macros. That's all that matters. And you can eat whatever you want as long as you hit your macros. And it's like, no, that's not how it works either. So I go to a vegetarian. I'm like, okay, I'll just cut out some stuff. I can't go full vegan. I love my dairy, So I love my honey, all that stuff. I was like, just small steps. Sure enough, start feeling better. So I'm like, okay, so there has to be something to this. Then I go full vegan. I decide to finally try full vegan. Well, for my body personally, it doesn't like carbs. It doesn't like a lot of carbs. So I was struggling when I went vegan to not be bloated. I was getting all the calories in. I managed to balloon up to like 210, but I had no abs, just like a flat stomach. And I was feeling good, but I had this constant bloat and constant hunger for being on a heavy carb diet. I would eat, 2 hours later, I'm hungry. 2 hours later, I'm hungry. So I'm like, shit, what's going on? Now, like, my scalp's getting dry. Weird stuff started happening like later on in my vegan diet. And I was like, oh my God, I'm taking all my iron. I'm doing the B vitamin stuff. I'm doing everything you're telling me, like kelp and all that. I plugged every hole, and always something would pop up later. So I started getting really weird stuff. It cleared up my skin for a little bit also, but then it came back. I guess I started being deficient in something. So I was like, okay, let me start reading up and finding out about the vegan diet really. So I'm watching all these like crazy Netflix documentaries about veganism and how cool and great it is. And like, look at everybody who's like prospering and doing so well. And like guys coming off 20 pills, that he takes every day to survive. He's like, oh, and you reversed it all with veganism.
I've seen them all.
Right.
Yes.
And I'm like, holy shit, this is crazy. I have to continue this somehow. What's my answer? So then I'm starting to change what I'm eating in the vegan diet. Like, okay, no more rice, do yams. Okay, like for my protein, do something that bloats you less. Like, okay, eliminate the grains, no rice, none of that, and just do like sweet potatoes and, stuff. Like I'm trying to like change the diet up. I'm like, what affects me the least? I couldn't find the answer to it. So your body's always craving meat, it's weird, dude. Even on the vegan diet, when you're fully like mentally there, I love all animals. I don't want to hurt them. I don't want to support the industry, blah, blah. Still, I'm like, a steak. I'm just like,
absolutely.
Okay. So I'm like reading everything, right? I go on the internet, I'm seeing and that's another thing I hate, the science behind diet, man. There's not a lot of hard science. It's just all those observational studies. Like the one that pissed me off the most when I found out about it later after doing some research is the red meat causes cancer. So I found some doctors on YouTube. They're called like Low Carb Down Under is the channel. And they have a bunch of Australian doctors and from all over the place, but they talk about low carb diets. And then one woman was talking about how the study that was used to link red meat to cancer had something stupid like 9%. Like the rate was like 9%. The participants that were writing their little questionnaires and sending them back, like 9% of them had increased cancer rates. So even the authors of that said study were like, yeah, there's not enough for causation, But, the industry picks it up, the vegan industry, whoever else, the soy companies, whoever benefits from saying like red meat bad to sell their shit. So they're using that study. Well, the same study that was used to say cigarettes cause cancer was something like in the thousands, like 3,000% or something causal. Like, almost everybody that smokes, dude, is getting cancer. Almost everybody. It's like thousands of percentage. So then when you look at both of them and you go 9% is like, it's like a blip, dude. It doesn't even matter. And we're seeing it today, man. Like eggs at one time got a bad rap because of the fat. Now it's like, oh, eat your eggs. Oh, now fat is all of a sudden good for you. You need it for metabolic health. Like your hormones you have to have fat to produce like healthy levels of testosterone. Who would have thought? So like diet is going back and forth and it's so politicized is what I hate. But anyways, I was searching for all this stuff and I find these like other channels that finally don't care either side. They don't care about carnivores. They don't care about vegans. It's like, let's find the truth.
I love that.
And I found a couple of guys on, I think it was Joe Rogan's podcast that were like mentioning the same thing. And then on YouTube, you just see videos of people doing lectures and stuff talking about the same thing, doctors. And you start diving into the rabbit hole, man. And I start looking at everything and I'm like, oh, wow. You know, they tell you fiber, you absolutely need fiber. Turns out you don't, you know, especially when you're eating a meat heavy diet. It turns out that almost everything we're being told is like politicized in a way. You know, somebody's benefiting off, you know, the guys that made I forgot what the latest vegan documentary was that came out on Netflix where it blew everybody away. Turns out the company that funded that was like a soy company that sells soy products.
I feel like there's always someone looking to gain from something.
And that one was like, what the hell's going on here?
Yeah.
Because that one put me right back on track. Like, veganism, have to do it.
That might have been What the Health.
I think that's what it was, right? It had like that bodybuilder. One of them was like some vegan bodybuilder dude.
It was also like co-produced or sponsored by Arnold.
Yeah,
Arnold
I think
was a big one.
Yeah.
It had a bunch of Olympic athletes.
Yep.
That was a huge one.
They were selling it hard, dude.
Very hard.
Very well production quality. Like the studies they're citing, that's how they get you, dude. They confuse you with all these studies. I remember the funny one that I read about was they were saying, well, we've been eating like this for thousands of years, hundreds of years. If you look back at Roman times, the gladiators, they were so celebrated. What did they eat? And you can see, because they dug up bones, cut them open, and would see like the composition or whatever. And they were determining that they were on a heavy grain diet. That was one of the points they made in that movie. They're like, yeah, you see, the gladiators ate only grain, you know? And then a historian comes along that I read on YouTube that was like debunking all the shit. He was like, no. He was like, first of all, gladiators were slaves and they were fed the absolute worst food. They were fed grains like you would feed an animal to fatten them up so they can survive sword wounds and stuff like that. When you're a little chunkier, you can survive some of that, right? You're protecting your organs. This is like known everywhere. Okay.
Absolutely.
So then they said, okay, well, what were the really important ones given? Like the Roman legionnaires and stuff, like protect the royal guards and stuff, protecting. And sure enough, they're giving like the weirdest thing. I forgot what the name was, but it was like a blood soup. You're giving blood soup and animal meat and stuff like that. Crazy. So it's like you're giving your best, your finest soldiers, the finest food. Obviously, it's meat and meat-derived products.
Right.
And then you're giving your slaves grains. And it's like, but they don't mention that in the vegan thing. Yeah. And I'm all like, oh, shit, gladiators are eating grains too? Okay, it must be going way back then.
It really touches on what we were trying to accomplish, like, as we both like to work out and be as healthy as possible. And it goes back to not just the vanity of looking good and having clear skin, but you also just want to perform well.
Yeah, exactly.
You want to wake up and your stomach to feel good and be ready to hit the gym or hit the mats, whatever it is that you're doing for the day.
Yeah, that's another thing. You just want to be like, am I eating the best for my body?
Absolutely. I want to treat my body like this is the one and only vessel that you got. Yeah. That's how it is, right?
So yeah, it's just like, and you go through the rabbit hole of that, right? So now I'm starting to turn into like, okay, everything I've been told about vegan, if I can't even believe the minor stuff, what else could be false? So you go down the rabbit hole and then I end up to carnivore, the extreme opposite. It's like, cut everything out but meat. And then you're seeing like the testimonials of people who've done it, like, oh, it's cleared my like Crohn's disease. It's cleared my acne. It's cleared my whatever, like all the autoimmune stuff.
Almost the same ailments have been cured that the vegan diet has cured.
Crazy, right? So I'm like, okay, let's give this a try. So I go on this nasty like reduction diet of just limiting my food to seriously beef. I didn't even eat chicken. I read that white meats weren't even that nutritious for you. It's like, stick to ruminating animals. 4 legs, red meat, dark. As dark as you can go. And I was like, okay, cool. So I'm just going to eat steak all day and then try to incorporate organs and be healthy. Sure enough, the first month was hell. You get what everybody reports, like diarrhea, lethargy, like zero power in the gym. You lose that 6th gear. You're just feeling like flat. You feel flat,
right?
You know. And then like post that 1 month when I got like acclimated to it, dude, my power came back. I got shredded and I was eating more than I could ever imagine, more than I could even possibly eat to like track my calories. Like, I need to eat this much to gain weight. I couldn't even if I tried. And I was just getting shredded, dude. All the fat was coming. It was like a body composition change. And I was feeling amazing. I was like, carnivore, this is the way. This has to be the secret. Because even when I went on vegan, I didn't have that kind of a change and that kind of a span. So I was like, confirmation bias. Vegan is bullshit. Fuck vegetables, you know? Right. And then you get into the, oh shit, but I could only eat beef. and organs. And there's only so many ways you can get creative cooking that. Frying it, basting it, and baking it, or grilling it. It's like, dude,
eventually that's going to get old.
Exactly. And then when you go out with your friends to just do some, I can't have that. I can't have that. Can't have anything. Nothing.
After our long hikes, I remember when you were really dialed.
It was like beef.
Yeah.
If it's not an animal, like we'll have the little ham packs. Right. And that was it. I was like, okay, cheese is cool. You could have cheese from an animal. Make sure it's raw. You have to have raw cheese, raw milk, raw honey. And then there's health reasons you'd want to do that regardless, but they kept it very strict from what I was reading. And went on that, dude, and I lasted like half a year not having anything besides meat. And I remember when I ate my first raspberries, when I was like already starting to incorporate a little bit of fruits now. Okay. I was managing I was checking my blood sugar levels and my keto and all that stuff. And I was like, okay, I'm sick of feeling flat from having zero carb. And then I started hearing from that Carnivore MD guy, like, hey, being long-term keto isn't actually even healthy for you. You should be on like a cyclical keto. So this is where I'm like ending up right now, where I've reintroduced a bunch of foods, mainly fruits, because naturally that's just evolutionary, like part of the tree that wants to get eaten. Eat the fruit, poop the seed out. Seed is already on the ground with like everything it needs to grow. You know, it's already fertilized. The part of the plant that doesn't want to get eaten is literally everything else: stems, seeds, roots, anything. That stuff has like built-in little defense chemicals.
Absolutely.
So anyways, and that was another argument for the carnivore side, is that vegetables are toxic for you. Nuts are toxic for you.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So then I'm starting now to incorporate foods back into my diet slowly but surely. And I feel better than ever. And it's now varied enough. So, dude, meat and fruits, what more do you need? And then there's some veggies that I'm adding back in small amounts here and there, and it's just not a problem. It's like I'm adding in like sauerkraut, it's pickled, pickled veggies that are already like probiotically perfect for your stomach, very light. It's like anything that you have pickled, pickles are good, so I'm incorporating those. I still don't do broccoli. I'm not going to do spinach or, all that stuff. I don't. I don't even like them anyway. It's weird. For me, I was always like, hey, it's natural. If you give a kid like a choice to eat a steak and a piece of broccoli, the kid's picking the steak, dude. It's just like, and that's before you put everything in their head.
Right.
So, it's like, how much do you have to drill into a person to get them to forcefully change how they think about food? It's like, well, what are little kids naturally inclined to do? And that's probably what you were inclined to do. Right. You know what I mean? And everybody hated veggies as kids.
Oh, yeah. It's very hard to be on the veggie train. I know there's some kids here and there that are on it.
Right.
But it's pretty rare.
Yeah.
It's pretty rare. But, so how long has that been now that you've been trying to incorporate a more balanced?
So I really started dialing it in the past few months, just incorporating stuff again. I've gotten, a couple of times just bad about going out and having whatever I wanted, whatever. So I fell off the wagon of being strict. But in general, I've dialed it back in, and now I keep it simple, dude. I was reading about like the evolutionary perspective this one guy had, and he said when we were hunter-gatherers before farming, before agriculture, we ate meat, and there was times where we didn't catch any meat. We had a failed hunt, and so we would forage for food, which was fruits, and in times of starvation, we would start eating vegetables and stuff like that. That was the fallback. Think like, winter's coming and you have to, all the animals are gone, or there's very little big animals left and all the fruits are dead. You know what I mean? They've already fruited. It's done. They're out of season. So it's like seasonally eating whatever genetic makeup you have. So what lands you come from, what naturally grows there would be healthy for you. You just try to eat for your genetic makeup, because there are small variations in your genes in every person there that just can. Somebody does better on carbs than you do for some reason. Somebody does better on keto than you do. And it just goes back, dude, to really the area from, So I can't even tell somebody like, sure, go carnivore. Sure, do vegan. It's like, man, maybe it works for you well enough, but it could really mess someone else up.
I'm big into that because I got asked that a lot while I was vegan. Even now that it's been almost a full year off switching off, people will still ask me like what I eat and how I go about it. And I try to express to them that everyone's different. You should try it yourself though. You should kind of run through the motions and try as much as you can. And I think the reason why there's so many diets is because everyone's starting from that base like I did, the traditional American diet. Yeah. So of course, anything you go to from there is going to be better for you. And I always try to tell people, like, look, this is what works for me, but every body has a different body.
Exactly.
So we all have to try things and see what works for them. I take well to carbs. I don't take very well to dairy. I'm not lactose intolerant, but there's absolutely some level to that dairy is messing me up. And then when you started making your switch, and I also started following a little bit of the research papers you were sending me. So now when I have dairy, I make sure it's raw, high quality, all my butter's grass-fed, organic. And it really has made a difference for me. My body does really well when the dairy is high quality. So now I have meat back in my diet, high quality dairy, fruits and vegetables. And I keep it simple. I cook all my own meals. I know exactly what's going into them. I'm seasoning them. It just, I don't know. This is the best I've ever felt. But I also feel like I'm dialed in the most. I've gone through the trial and error. And now I'm putting all the pieces together to see where I'm at. And
dude, it's a process, never ending. And then what you're going to eat a year or two from now will be different. You know, you're just refining forever, for life, like refining. There's always new data coming out. There's always new something. But the milk thing is crazy, because the reason I started with the raw milk is I was reading about dairy and like raw milk, and same thing, dude. If I would eat something with dairy, like breakout, or just it didn't sit well, you know, something, there was like bloat, something wrong.
Always bloating, always bowel movements changing.
Yeah, it's just messing me up. So I was like, dude, what is wrong with milk? Because I would remember back in Romania, the milk was so thick, so creamy, didn't have a problem. Came to America, it's like water, it's thin as hell, doesn't even have a taste to it. So I'm like, okay, what was the difference back home with how the olden times people were eating? You know, they had to have known something. So I start researching it, and I'm like, oh, okay, there's places that sell raw milk. Cool. So what's the difference between raw milk? And I'm like reading everything. Now all of a sudden I learn about A1 and A2 milk. So there's like a mutation that happened in cows, all the brown cows or whatever that we have out here in the States. They all produce A1 milk, which is not good for you. It's essentially like the fats in the milk are sized differently to what it is in a human's. And the A2 milk more closely resembles the human fatty chain acid or whatever size-wise, that whatever I was reading. But anyways, and that one causes less problems. And then part 2, the poison really comes from the way it's produced. So they were giving cows, obviously, to industrialize. Your cows are not on the pastures roaming, eating grass, whatever else.
A normal
life. They're in the pens eating the crap hay bales you give them, and like low nutrition diet, and you stuff them with antibiotics. So literally when a cow produces milk, it's just the quality is based off what it's eating. So you're starting to get shitty milk, right? You're getting the shitty milk, and then it's pumped full of hormones and shit. That's what you're always reading, like no hormones on milk. And the problem with that is the milk becomes like pustulant and just like bad, rancid. So what do you do when your cow is producing very low quality shitty milk? You pasteurize it. You heat it up, homogenize it, remove almost everything. So then you're stripping away and destroying all the natural, like the lactase enzyme that helps you absorb. Yeah, it helps you digest.
That was the biggest thing when you sent me that article. And I saw that when you have A2 milk, there's 2 high quality enzymes that have not been taken out yet through the processing. And that's actually what helps your body digest it and take in the lactose better. And I'll be honest, I was a little scared to go from vegan to all of a sudden drinking raw milk. And everyone kept asking me, like, do you feel a difference? Is there any difference yet? In the first couple of months, it just was even keel. Everything seemed normal. And then like 4, 5, month 6, I started feeling like superpowers again. I felt stronger. I felt like my digestive system was feeling a lot better. All the bowel movements were normal. And
crazy, huh?
When I'm in the gym rolling, I need that extra 2, 3 rounds to go. I felt like I was there. I was ready to pull the trigger. So really hard to say, but also at the same time, I am not cheating on the diet. And that was big. Because even like you talked about earlier, when you were vegan, and I know when I was vegan, you just had these urges for certain things. And it was really funny. I remember learning when honey was a big no-no for vegans. And I was always like, really? Because that seems so strange to me.
Yes.
That seems like one of the most natural things that I could ingest.
And you're not hurting anything.
Yeah. Right. Not hurting anything. Hopefully, you know, with the bees, I know there was a big thing about bees and colony collapse disorder, and that's more with pesticides though.
Right, exactly.
And the bees taking out from flowers and taking back to their hives.
Yeah.
But ultimately, now I go to the local farmer's market, I get raw honey, something locally sourced from my area. And another thing, my allergies were always bad, even when I was vegan.
Really?
And I couldn't explain exactly why I had bad allergies. And now that I'm switched to this whole food, raw, just really clean diet, I haven't had to take a single allergy pill.
Wow.
And my sister and I are very synced up with our allergies. And that's what was one of the big things that I knew something was going right. So I don't know if it was the raw honey, locally sourced, so all the pollen was getting into my system and helping me with the allergies and whatnot. But I check in with her like, how are you doing today? It's like, I've already taken 2 pills today.
Wow.
And I know what that feels like when you're taking pills and your allergies are not getting relieved. It's a living hell.
Suck, yeah.
It's a living hell, especially with her. She has a whole family to take care of, her job. Like, it's tough. It's tough to function as a human. And that's one of the biggest blessings making the switch to this diet has been, is no allergies. My skin has been doing very well.
And this is incorporating animal products.
This is with animal products, which was the biggest fear for me. I thought for sure, because I told you I read that book. Number 1 thing was no meat, let alone no red meat. And then the number 2 thing was no dairy. And I was like, wow, how am I ever going to do this? And I didn't make the switch right away to veganism. It was hard. It's a hard path.
Oh, yeah.
And
baby steps.
Exactly. You got to do baby steps. And then you asked me how long did I go, and I made it a good solid 3-4 years.
Crazy.
Like without meat. A little cheating here and there with dairy, but not too much. But ultimately, when I was dialed in, I still felt slightly off. There was still something slightly off.
I had the same feeling, man.
And we talked about it. I was following all vegan pages. I had vegan roommates. I had other vegan mentors.
You're deep in the life.
And you're deep. And it's tough because that's just life in general. You're going to get confirmation bias. You're going to be surrounded by people that, you know, are also on your team. Whatever that diet is. You belong. Yeah. And it was like a secondary side effect of it was nice not thinking about hurting animals and stuff like that. I grew up fostering animals, had tons of animals here and there. So it felt good in that sense that I was doing my part. But ultimately, I had to look at the bigger picture, the grand scheme of things, how many generations before me ate a certain way.
Right, exactly.
And veganism was just never something that was possible. Like, this is really the first time that we can be alive that this is possible.
Yep.
You can go to the market, get these vegetables, get these fruits.
All year round.
All year round. And then that also brings up a little bit of weirdness, right? Like, you shouldn't necessarily be eating these fruits and these vegetables all year round. They should be seasonal. And that's something I wanted to learn more about, was which fruits and vegetables were seasonal and which ones to stay away from, because now you start getting into the monocrops and, you know, the way they're cultivating these fruits and vegetables all year round, and how many small animals are harmed.
Oh, yeah. I saw that study, dude. Those like machines just like rolled over thousands of them.
Yeah.
So the vegans, like,
small mice, rabbits, all sorts of animals.
Everything.
Birds,
Lizards,
everything. They don't care. They're just going to take their crops. And then also it's bad for the soil, because the soil, you want to be rotating crops.
You strip it of everything.
Exactly. You strip it of all the nitrogen, all the nutrients.
So that's what I like about eating animals, the regenerative farming thing that they do. They'll grow their crops, but then ferry in cows on that land after they've gotten everything. They do their thing, they get free compost. The land's getting replenished with all the key chemicals it needs for the next crop to come in. Dude, they're making this like a net positive, you know?
Right.
And you're supporting the local farmer too, which is great. I hate buying from the big corporations. I don't like my food to be, if it's in one store and then it's another 10 other stores, you're already like too big for me. If I go to the local farmer's market, I'm okay with paying a little more, knowing that it says like sourced locally, supporting local farmer. I'm like, cool. This isn't getting sent out on some mass-produced scale to all the other 50 states, you know?
Right.
I'm like, no, thanks. If you can buy locally, guys, buy locally. I mean,
there's tons of farmers markets in Arizona.
Everywhere.
I live right next to the Arrowhead Mall farmers market. It is huge.
They're massive, dude.
It's amazing.
Everywhere. I remember even in Atlanta, they had massive ones. You can find anything all locally. The local honey I brought from like Georgia Made is like incredible, dude. Raw, all the good stuff that you would want. It costs a little more, yes, but you're eating cleaner.
Exactly.
So like, you know, what's the what's the benefit versus like, you know, saying, well, I don't want to spend an extra $1 to a pound on this, or this milk is too expensive because it's raw, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, dude, what does it cost you to have like bad skin or upset stomach? And maybe that leads to bad sleep or making poor decisions or just feeling like crap every day, waking up.
I think it does tie into everything. I mean?
Like, what's the cost of that on the back end? Nobody thinks about that.
Right. It's just one piece of the puzzle.
Right.
But it all ties together. Like, you have to look at the big picture,
right,
and what this does for you and your body, your psyche. But you're right. It also feels good just to support the local people that are at the market.
Yeah.
I ran into a buddy that I train with, and he's over there and
selling
yeah,
stuff?
him and his wife do a cannoli dip, and it's really good. Yeah, it's amazing. So it's just cool. You never know who's going to be there, or like who's doing what. And it's really cool to see like when people are passionate about things too.
Right, you see it in the product. It tastes so different, dude.
It does.
Yeah. If vegans, carnivores, it doesn't matter, dude. Animal products or plants, like, go local.
Yeah,
don't support the massive industries that are scaled so high that they don't care about anything. It's just making the money at the end result. Like, whatever you're buying from that like orange company that's making half of the oranges, it's like crap compared to that local farmer that's taking the time to grow his stuff.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
It's just, dude. So, I wanted to ask you, so when you were going backwards and starting to reintroduce like milk and honey and then meat and stuff like that. So how was that for you, that change?
It was really fun at first. I'll admit it. I wasn't sure how I was going to feel. I wasn't sure how my body was going to take to it. But almost day one, I started out with chicken. I went light and then up to steaks. And honey was a big thing for me because of the snack at the end of the night. I needed something clean, but also something that, because I also cut weight a couple times a year, so I had to make sure my diet was super dialed in. And I also like to cook, so it was like a sense of pride to be in the kitchen, getting back to like more of my roots, making sure all the food was really clean. I was seasoning it. I was doing everything to it. I knew exactly what was going into my meals. And I'll be honest, I was waking up feeling really refreshed every single day, looking forward to the meals, not dreading anything. And I really just got this really nice diet dialed in, where I'd wake up in the morning and have some fresh juice, do my workouts, have a nice protein shake with the raw milk in it, now going from all the almond milks and cashew milks, which those alone, if you ever read the labels, you know, those big brands like you talked about, Silk, all the ones,
sugar
there's a lot of
weird stuff in there.
Like xanthium gum for preservatives, all sorts of very weird chemicals,
and like quote milk.
When you look on the back and it's hard to pronounce a lot of the ingredients, that's usually the key factor for me, that I shouldn't be messing with it. So that was huge for me to start going home and like really feeling like I was cleaning everything up. And I saw it in my performances. I saw it in the weight cuts. I saw it in my mental attitude as well. I really felt like it had a big play on like how happy I was throughout the day. If I woke up moody, how I was like pretty much approaching my day and going into the gym with that mindset of like, we're ready to fire on all cylinders. Is my brain functioning to its optimal health? And I felt like it really was. And I saw the biggest gains a few months in, once it really felt like my body was adapting to the change now. Yeah. So that was huge. That was huge for me. Similar, huh?
So what do you think? Okay. So now, because I know juicing is big. You love your juices.
I do.
Cold pressed.
I'm big. That was something I kept from the vegan cycle.
So I was going to ask you, now that you know, I don't know if you've seen the actual studies or cared to look, but the ones that say like, hey, certain vegetables, like obviously like a cabbage has like X amount of naturally occurring pesticides in there to discourage animals from eating it, you know?
Right.
So do you ever think about like the accumulative effects of the juicing, constantly having the veggies that maybe could be messing around with some internal stuff like thyroid or hormone levels or something? Like, do you ever give that a thought?
Absolutely. I think it's very interesting. And again, I try to buy everything organic. You know, trying to figure out which ones have the most amount of pesticides, the least amount, even when they're organic. So when you're USDA organic, that only means that you had to go up to their standard, which I believe is 97% organic, which means they leave just a little bit of room for pesticides, herbicides, all this. And it does make sense, because when you go to the market and you're getting organic, but everything's cookie cutter. Everything looks the same. When you go to the farmer's market and you go get that zucchini, that cucumber, it all looks drastically different sizes, different bumps. So I always find that very suspicious that everything looks very cookie cutter, even when it's organic.
Picture perfect every time, which I get is what they're selling, and that's what people want to go. You want to go to the grocery store and see exactly the way it looks every time. I hate that food culture too, because I'm sure you read about like the food waste that happens when they're harvesting all these vegetables or fruits, whatever.
Yes.
And then if one has like a bump on it or some defect, they call it, they throw it away. It's perfectly good.
And that's a good point, because I was just reading the other day about this older guy. He's like a retired biochemical engineer, and his passion was apples. So he has 130 different species of apples saved, and he's keeping them alive and well by growing them throughout the year. But if you were to go to the supermarket, you'd probably see about 6 different kinds. And that's because they've all been genetically engineered to some point. So pretty much they're making sure they have the least amount of bruising, the same form over and over, when there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, some apples might bruise easier than others. Some might be bigger, some might grow ssmaller.
Make them more resistant to pesticides.
More resistant, yep, exactly. So this guy has taken it upon himself to preserve over 130 different species, which I didn't even know. Someone that loves apples, fruits, vegetables, I just assumed there was the big 8 or whatever it is that you always see inside the supermarket. But really, there's much more, but they bruise too easily. They're different shapes. They come out looking funny. And no one wants that for some reason.
Yeah,
when realistically, that would be more pure, more original.
And they're more tasty too, like more flavor. I noticed that when I came to the States. All the fruits on the shelves here, dude, they're almost like water, cardboard, very little to no flavor. There's no juiciness to them. As back home in Eastern Europe, because we like use the land to grow crops and stuff like that. So we would have a cherry tree. We would have a bunch of walnuts. We would have pears, blah, 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 everything. Every time you picked it straight off the tree, wow, the difference is insane.
Right.
Completely different fruit is what it tastes like. The strawberries, a lot smaller. They're tiny, dude. They're like a third of the size and pack a punch when you eat one fresh out of the ground. Instead of going over to Whole Foods even, which is considered quality, and you get these giant strawberries that could fit in your palm. And to somebody that's never had, like, I guess you would say non-GMO or more naturally grown, fresher, you know, they taste good to you, perhaps. You're like, wow, these are good. This is high quality. But, dude, if you had the real stuff, you would never buy that again.
Right. No, it's really interesting, because I was into that a lot, about the origin of fruits and vegetables. A lot of things looked much different.
Yeah, crazy.
So watermelon was almost unedible. Strawberries, almost unedible. Avocados had a very thin layer of meat and was a huge seed.
Yeah.
So GMO isn't necessarily bad. So when people hear that, they get very turned off to it, especially the vegan organic community.
Right.
And I remember I was just the same way. I wanted to stay away from all GMO'd items. So I'd always look for that GMO verified project on the bag, wherever I was shopping at, trying to avoid it. But realistically, it's pretty natural for us to go through and select the best.
Yeah, the natural way. Everything's GMO.
Everything is crossbred, GMO'd. Yes.
Yeah.
And another thing, when I was big onto the vegan diet, I was got turned on to Dr. Sebi. That was a big thing.
I heard about
he was
that
the
crazy
guy,
stuff.
Yeah, he was the guy that was all about the alkaline diet. So he was vegan, but to another degree. And it was just something I ultimately couldn't follow, because I alone thought what my diet was on was strict enough, and I was having enough trouble not, tapering off and having that milkshake or whatever it was. And his thing was pretty much eating all of the original fruits and vegetables. So like spinach is a hybrid. That was man-made, crossbred to be created. So he had a huge list of things that you shouldn't eat. And he was saying through his research that he could cure everything, every disease.
I remember
under
the cancer claims and stuff like that, reversing everything. Yeah.
And I wish I had more knowledge on it, because I believe he did win a couple federal cases that he was brought up on, but he ultimately never got to live out his life. And he never really got to step up and
they try to silence him.
They try to silence him. Yeah,
he sued and won the suit, right? I believe.
Yeah, I believe he did win, and I know there were supposed to be documentaries coming out for him. I'm not sure exactly where that's at with all that. I would really be curious as to see what other research and what other information was for him. But it was interesting. What I took away from him, though, was the list of vegetables that have been man-made, crossbred. But ultimately, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just something that we do as humans to make sure we get the juiciest, get the best quality.
Throughout time, dude, it's like, oh yeah, this tree made that fruit that big. Okay, let's take the seeds from that and do it with the one that made the most fruit overall. And then you get the biggest fruit and the most overall. And you just, that process over hundreds of thousands of years, men are just doing this to plants.
That's genetically modifying.
Yeah. We're just modifying. And in the lab, you just do it on a much more scientific, precise level. We're going and changing DNA and genes, all
exactly. Which I can't say here or there, but I just know that ultimately everything's pretty much been GMO.
Yeah. And it didn't bother me. Like, I never fell for the GMO thing. Like, I have to have GMO, non-GMO. I'm like, what does it matter, dude? Whatever you're eating is GMO down to the animal. Like, do you want to know what a wild cow looked like? I don't know how many years ago when we started domesticating them. They probably don't look like they do now.
Right.
There's some differences. So
I know wheat was a big one too.
Wheat looked nuts.
Wheat looks crazy. Corn looks way different. That was interesting, that wheat documentary. And that's like, I think a lot of the reasons why people do have gluten intolerance and
I never believed in that shit either until I met my cousins out here, and they were like, I have gluten intolerance. And I'm like, get the fuck out of here. What does that even mean? I just hear like the little woke kids talking about, I'm gluten intolerant. I'm like, God, we're getting soft. Like, what is gluten intolerant, dude? Do you know what a Romanian diet is? Bread is everywhere. And then they're like, no, I'm gluten intolerant. And then they're finally telling me like what the effects were. And I was like, oh, this is real. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Gluten intolerance is a thing now.
Yeah. People having horrible indigestion, almost worse than the people that are lactose intolerant. So I can't imagine being double that if you were on both the trains. But again, I believe it comes from the bad dairy. Over time, just having horrible dairy that's been processed.
To give that to babies, dude. They say like it's poison. Like, don't do milk mixed in formula. Don't do cow milk. And then they'll try to put you on like goat's milk, because goat's milk has that more natural fatty chain compared to humans. And now I'm reading stuff about give your kids raw milk, because it's much better.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, yeah, that makes sense, because that's what we were getting back home. The milkman would come with that little jug, and you would choose to heat it up yourself or not. And you would make other stuff out of that milk. But raw, dude, raw.
Right.
Because we weren't so industrialized, and it was like the local farmer with the local cows is producing high quality milk that you can drink straight from the teat. But I would never drink some, I'm not going to say the brand, but some big brands you see on the shelves. Like, if they produce raw milk, I know that cow's sick, dude. That cow's barely alive, eating the crappiest food. I'm not drinking that.
Right. I remember growing up, I was getting down. I used to drink milk every day, maybe half a gallon. I started with whole milk, 2%, all the way to skim. And it's just so funny to see the progress go all the way to that, to no milk, back to raw. So I've literally tried every type of milk there is, and I've been by far the most impressed with raw milk. It's incredible,
dude.
And even that bread you found, like, to talk about back to the wheat thing, is that when you go look at the back of any sort of loaf of bread, it is just filled with weird chemicals, weird words you can't pronounce,
all the preservatives, yeah, it's crazy, dude. I'm looking at the store, right? I'm seeing vegan blah, I'm seeing like non-GMO, I'm seeing like all the stupid woke labels you could possibly see on this piece of bread, and I turn over the ingredient list and I'm like, brown sugar. Like, why the hell is there sugar in here? Why is there like 10 other chemicals I can't pronounce? Why is there like pressed oil and some weird other stuff? I'm like, dude, can you just do like just a basic like salt and whatever else and done? And
exactly.
It's like, God, if you get like that bread and just leave it on the counter, it takes forever to go bad. Dude, if you get like from a baker, or you just get the ones that literally just have like 2 ingredients, the wheat and the salt and whatever it takes to get that process going, and then all of a sudden, like 4 or 5 days later, you get these little moldy spots, dude.
Right away.
Away. And you're just like, oh, and it tastes different, dude.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big one. And then we've been following all these other pages now. Flo Midas, Real Soul Bro, all these guys. It's really interesting how against oils they are. And I remember you put me onto that. Yeah. You're like, hey man, you really just need to stop cooking with that oil. Just start using butter again. And that was what was hard being vegan. And then also looking at the research behind oils. And
you killed an animal there using that butter.
Yeah.
Guilty.
Yeah. So it was really, really interesting to kind of go to the no oils. And I really felt that was a big difference in my diet too.
Dude, it is. So the Carnivore MD guy that I follow, Paul Saladino, he was talking about how seed oils are like responsible for every ailment we have, the obesity and all that. And, you know, aside from the sugar and all that, but it was really the introduction of seed oils in the early, I think 1900s or whatever. They've only been around for like 100 or so years. It's brand new. Cooking in refined seed oils or just vegetable oils is like a brand new thing. The way people for hundreds of years, thousands of years cooked their food was rendered fat, ghee, tallow, the fat off the animal. And then we moved to these seed oils, and all of a sudden, like, obesity exploded, diabetes exploded, like everything's exploding. And he was doing his research and found out that, yeah, man, seed oils are actually like really bad for you. And what was it? That was one of the reasons I started getting into cooking with tallow. I was like, okay, let me try this tallow stuff. And, you know, when you're cooking your steak, you burn it sometimes on like olive oil and whatnot. Like Absolutely. It gets, you know, you char the outside. I noticed when I was cooking in the tallow, my steak never burned. It just got crispy. I got a nice crusty red exterior that would seal in the juices, and I wouldn't get the black char anymore, no matter how hot I got the pan, dude. And I would cook on some Hellfire grill with like 20 eyes that was just producing heat that would sear the hair off your arms, you know? And I was like, let me just crank this up. I want to sear my meat. And sure enough, in the tallow, I would get the perfect steaks. You would see them all the time. I'd post them on my Instagram and whatnot, the stories. The moment you cut into it, the plate around the steak completely dry until you cut it open, and then the juices came out.
Wow.
Which never happened when I was doing it in like vegetables and stuff. Like immediately you'd put it on the plate and it would start puddling whatever juices were coming out of the steak. Yeah. So dude, the cooking changed. Tallow alone changed, you know, everything that I make, from chicken to beef to whatever. Just took it to a next level that I was like, wow, so this is how you're supposed to cook meat. And this stuff, it has a higher smoke point. It won't burn as much. You know, it's just better than vegetable oils in every way. And again, it's something that your body knows how to process. Animal fat. It's on everything you eat that's coming from an animal that has parts of, you know, fatty muscles, fatty whatever tissues are everywhere in organs. So your body knows how to just use it. And it's like that whole butter and margarine thing, you know, it's like butter, animal fat's so bad for you, have the fake stuff. And it turned out the fake stuff was 1,000 times worse for you, dude. I remember when I was seeing it, I was like, oh my God.
That was the weirdest thing about being vegan, was I was, like you said, I was still looking for that meat substitute. So I'm going to the Impossible Burgers, the Beyond Burgers. And again, at the time, from not having meat to going to those, I'm like, these are a lifesaver. They taste so good. All the meat substitutes I was eating
They're bomb, dude. I love those burgers.
They are good. But again, I'm like, I'm very strict on going to the ingredients. Let me look at what's on the back. The first 5 ingredients is pea protein and then 4 oils, 4 different oils. And I'm just like, wow, this is incredible. Like, this cannot be good for you to have this much oil and just pea protein, which again, pea protein is super refined, very, very factory made, chemically processed. Same with all those vegan proteins, which I still use, and I'm still want to maybe switch over to something different, because I do worry about how isolated pea protein is and how it reacts to your body. But when I ate those Beyond Meat burgers, I was like getting that fix I wanted, but at the same time I felt off a little bit. It wasn't digesting very well, and I think it's just because of all the oils that was in it. Yeah.
Oh dude, I was loving that when I was on the vegan diet. Those burger
they look, they smell. It is insane
damn close,
how close it is.
Whoever designed that in whatever laboratory, congratulations, dude. You did well.
Did very well.
You're keeping vegans on track. And
now there's going to be the lab grown meat.
That's an interesting, dude. That one is super interesting. Now, if you're a vegan today and they come out with lab grown meat, and it's like basically a 1-to-1, has everything normal meat has, a taste, damn near close enough, what do you do?
Right. Is that
your argument's gone now? Because the main argument is morality, right? Like that's what it originally started at. So we love animals, don't want to eat animals. We don't have to as humans, because how society's built, you just eat vegetables the rest of your life. Great. But now that argument's out the window, what do you do? Because research is starting to come out that shows like meat is actually super nutritious. And the most nutrient dense food you could ever eat is organs. It's like, no, we got to go back to the original stuff. So now you're a vegan thinking like, oh crap, there's, synthetic meat being made now at the cellular level. It's the same. I didn't harm any animals.
And now there's no harm behind it.
Exactly. So now how do you sell it to yourself?
Because technically lab-grown meat is still used with cells from animals. So it's now, I'd assume vegans aren't going to go for it. That's just what I would assume, especially the hardcore ones. Because obviously there's spectrums of veganism.
Right.
And I'm glad I was right in the middle of everything. I never was the guy that was posting, hating on anyone. I never told anyone to go vegan. I never told anyone I was vegan.
Really?
I love the memes.
You didn't go militant?
I could not get enough of the memes. Like, how do you know someone's vegan?
Oh,
they'll tell you.
Yeah.
It's like, after I saw that, I was like, I'm never telling anyone. So I just like to play my role. I like to do what's best for me. I had my motives, my goals behind it, and I'm never going to try to convince someone else to do something. Yeah. But I do encourage strongly that everyone goes and tries different things, because no one wants to just sit there and read all day. There's only so much that knowledge is going to do for you. Yeah. You got to apply it. And there's nothing more important as far as diet goes than you trying that yourself, finding out what works for your body, because I'm not the same as you. You're not the same as me, and anyone that's listening. We're all different. We're all going to react differently to these diets. But ultimately, if you can cook your own food, that's the biggest thing. People ask me all the time. I had a buddy message me on Instagram the other day saying he's going to start working out again. And what does he recommend in the gym? I didn't even give him any gym tips. I said, number one, you start cooking yourself. Every meal you need to cook for yourself at home. The rest of the gym stuff's going to fall into place. You're going to find your way.
That's the easy part.
The gym part's the easy part. Just go pick those things up and put them down a bunch of times. Get on the treadmill, get on the bike, elliptical, whatever it is. But really the battle is going to be what you stuff your face with once you leave the gym. That's the hardest part.
Dude, that's like 80% of the battle.
We all struggle with that too. Like we all do. We all want the saltiest, fattiest, grossest things. We do. Like I still crave certain things from my childhood. Jack in the Box. I'll pass a Jack in the Box and my head will whip just a little bit, just to look. But ultimately, it's making that decision not to go, because like, why put in all this work just to take a few steps back?
And then you eat clean, and then you do fall off the wagon once, right? And then you feel like shit afterwards. Like, and you're like, why did I even eat that, dude?
I'll even admit the last couple of days I have been eating kind of whatever I want. Like if I have this urge to go out and have someone make a meal for me, which is obviously a great feeling. Like, don't get me wrong. It's so nice to go somewhere
and get treated.
Get treated.
Right.
Absolutely. I'm not saying that I'm some saint that cooks at home and is perfect. No way. I fall off all the time. But consistency over time is the goal.
Yes.
As I'm trying to be more consistent over a long period of time, so that when I do fall off, it is a glorious meal. And I don't even like using the word cheat meal. It's an earned meal. It is my earned meal for being so diligent and doing the right things. Now I can sit back, enjoy that pizza a little bit. Or like last night, went to Pita Jungle. Like, am I going to fall off? But now I can kind of pick what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go to a place that tends to lean on the healthier side.
Okay.
But even there, you get the food and I'm seeing the oil just drip off. And I'm thinking, oh, vegetable oil. Like, I know they cook this. And,
most basic ingredient.
The most basic,
How do you feel days after once you break like that?
Usually I'll start to feel lethargic. I'll notice my mood changing a little bit. You almost feel a little bit sad, but in the sense that you could have done better. You could have made that right decision. But ultimately, I don't think anyone should beat themselves up, because that's something we all do anyways as humans. We just get hard on ourselves. Like, oh, you could have done this, you could have done that. I think there's a time and a place for that. And as long as you're being consistent over time, making the right decisions, I think it's okay to
you're
fall
allowed to
off.
splurge
You're
on
allowed
your
to
meal.
splurge once in a while. I mean, life's short.
You're right.
And it's pretty cool we've made it this far. We're not in the 1900s, the 1800s. We have some crazy options. I was on a hike just on Sunday, so yesterday, with Molly, and we're out in nature, miles deep in a canyon, and I'm laying on a rock with this applesauce packet. And I'm thinking, how cool is this over all these years, how people used to go hiking and just taking whatever most basic foods they can. But we live in such a cool day and age that I can just be sitting in this little creek bed sipping on this strawberry applesauce. And I'm like, this is kind of cool. This is kind of cool.
Yeah. And it just reinforces it, man. When you do break from your diet and have like a very bad day, like sweets, chocolates, blah, blah, whatever your little inkling is, your body will tell you right away. Like for me, I'll know the next day, dude, that night probably. I'll be like, oh my God, why did I do this? I'm never doing this again. Sure enough, it takes some time, like 3, 4, 5 weeks later, whatever. You're like, okay, just a little bit. Feel bad again. But it's crazy how if you're just eating clean for a certain amount of time, when you do go back to eat the quote dirty things you used to eat, it gets you sick, dude.
Yes, absolutely it does.
Yeah,
I feel the difference every time.
Have you tried to get your family to change?
Yes, that's actually a really good question, because I had them all on the vegan train.
No way, dude.
Yes, except for my brother-in-law. So my sister and my mom, after they saw me on it for a few years, they both decided to go the same route.
Wow.
And again, my sister's same story as you, not taking the carbs very well. Her body does not react to eating that many carbs. And she was having all the same kind of symptoms, that bloating, lethargic, just feeling a little bit off by being too carb loaded. My mom did really well with it, and she pretty much stayed on it. She's still on it.
Really?
So I came to them and said, look, I think I'm going to go off of it and go to raw organic.
Heresy.
Yeah. And they were blown away. My sister was in a way relieved, because she was like, well, I want to go back because I've been having these cravings. So now her and I, again, she still eats clean. She's getting, the cleanest meat she can, trying to do her best, which I think ultimately is the goal.
Right.
Is like, you should at least be trying. My mom said, hey, I'm just really happy. I feel good the way I'm eating, and I'm just going to continue on. So, kudos to her for just keep going and sticking with it.
Wow.
But it's really interesting. And I felt bad ultimately, because I started to see kind of the light and kind of seeing that, maybe we shouldn't eat vegan all the time. I think it's great and I still eat vegan as much as I can, just because it's ingrained in me now. I don't need meat all the time, but I still put my meat into my diet, Yeah. So I went over there and I kind of let them know, hey, I've been, doing these new studies, been reading up on the new papers, and, kind of looking at the vegan trend from a third party perspective now, not as someone that's inside of the tunnel, but now that's someone that's looking in. And I was finding that, some of these people that I was once looking up to, they kind of look frail and skinny, and it kind of looks like their face is sinking in a little bit. And not to say that that's because of veganism. That could be the genetic traits. That could just be their, their background. But ultimately, I was like,
weird how a lot of them look like that.
It is very interesting. And I was following a guy who was hardcore vegan, 8 years, and he's one of those dudes that will go to bat. Like if he sees some bullshit, he'll call you out online. He'll argue with you all day. He was a New Yorker too, so he had just a lot of he was the man. Like really, it was really cool to like. I would always check his page because he was always trying to like wake people up. And then one day he switched. He switched back to animal products, and he said, "Look, I see the truth now." And he goes, and you know what made him switch? He was raising both of his kids vegan. And he started seeing their eyes drooping. He started seeing problems with their teeth.
Wow.
And he couldn't figure it out. He was doing the same thing you said. He was trying to fill all the holes. He said, I do everything right. My kids, I did everything right. Because again, then once he announced that he wasn't going to be vegan anymore, the whole community turned on him.
They shunned him, huh?
They shunned him and started attacking him. And he was firing back. So he had this guy was so knowledgeable. He had his own garden. He had his own rooftop garden, was growing his own fruits and vegetables as much as he could.
Right.
You don't have a lot of space. He's living in the city in New York. And he was taking his kids to the doctor, and the doctor was saying, yeah, they're having problems with their teeth. He could tell in their eyes that they were getting the dark circles in their eyes already. and he essentially took them onto animal products and completely flipped the script, started doing research, started promoting animal products. And I'm like, this is a guy that does his due diligence. He does his research. He was a trusting figure, as much as I can say someone is a trusting figure, because obviously I don't know him that well. I only know him from his page, but from what I could tell, he was really doing the research, switched over to animal products. He was reporting back about his kids doing much better. Their teeth were doing better. Their eyes were looking better.
Wow.
So now he is full animal trained.
Really?
And he goes to bat with these videos. It is really interesting.
Oh my God, dude.
It's a really interesting page. Dude. Yeah. And he even admitted that he got a little absorbed in it and kind of was like, you know, I was in it. So you kind of put up certain blinders to things.
Yeah.
And then he started really pointing out these other big vegan activists and kind of looking at their health and how they were doing. And he was just kind of making that connection, not trying to rag on them, but he was trying to use them as an example. Like, why are they so frail and skinny?
That's a funny thing in the carnivore community. It's like the number one thing they'll say, like, oh, your doctor's recommending your vegan doctor. How does he look? And they're showing like a list of the vegan doctors that go to bat for vegans. They all look frail as hell, bony. And then they're like, showing the carnivore doctors are all jacked, muscle bound and stuff. I'm like, okay, guys, that's a funny way to look at it, but it's like, dude, it is the thing you notice. Like all the people that are hardcore vegan just look weak.
And it's not to say there aren't, like, because we've seen the documentaries, there's some vegans that are killing it.
And I wonder,
there are good ones.
Are there though?
But I also wonder, you wonder how much are they following it. Right. I really believe that there are a few that are strictly vegan and they look like that.
Professional athletes.
But again, I just really think genetics have so much more to do with life than we want to admit.
Okay.
Because we all want to say that everyone is equal, but the truth is genetics play such a big role. And I really believe that as someone, you know, that follows not just fighting, but that has so much to do with your genetics, but now has done almost every diet under the sun. I just really believe that your genetics has a huge role in how you're going to perform and how you're going to do with these diets.
I wonder about the professional athletes, how strict they really are. Because if you have, you know, these nutritionists that are so well versed in everything, and behind closed doors, I mean, yeah, you can claim you're vegan and like you did better in a few matches, games, whatever, but it's like, dude, on the back end, I know that nutritionist is telling you, hey bro, you need to eat more red meat, you need to do this. It's like, and now you're caught up into that whirlwind of like, you're part of us now, and if you ever go back on your diet, you're going to get shunned, you're going to get called out, you're a hypocrite, blah, blah, blah. Dude, they attack you on both sides of the aisle. It's not just vegans, carnivores too. Like if you're hardcore carnivore and pushing that stuff, the moment you start reintroducing foods and like, oh, you're going back to eating poison, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, dude, Mother Nature is smart. Okay. The answer is not on the extreme one end or the other. It's somewhere in the middle.
I agree.
You know, we're all finding our way back somewhere in the middle. And there's a smart way to do it. And sure, it took both extremes to figure out some things, and then you just slowly work your way.
Which I'm super grateful for. Like, that's why I'm not trying to talk shit on either side, because it's great. We need people on both extremes. We need people in the middle. Why is it that diet is such a crazy science that hasn't been dialed in yet? Because it's so complex.
And there's money behind it.
Of course.
What you eat, you got to pay for what you eat.
Yes, exactly.
And it's just like, if I'm a soy producer, how do I get people to eat more soy?
Right.
Okay, well, what's the bastion of like trust? Scientists, you know? If a scientist says, if a study says it, you know, I'm all of a sudden, I got authority. So if you eat soy, you're 26% more likely to blah, 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 have better blood pressure, have this. Now I'm selling my product, dude. Now the new fad is out. How many new fads have you had with like fruits or veggies? Like, do this every day, eat one of these every day to blah, blah, blah. And
Absolutely.
it's just like, oh, dude. And I tried them all.
And that's what makes it so hard, because you have to wonder who's behind what ideologies,
right?
Who's pumping what product, and who just wants you to be healthy. And I think ultimately we're not going to know for a long time.
Probably, right?
Right.
I don't know.
But if you go out there, trial and error, find out what works best for you, I think that you can get pretty darn close to optimizing your health. But it's gonna be a while. For me, it's now a 8, 7, 9 year process.
Right.
You know,
dude,
it's been hard. It's been hard, but I do feel the best I've ever felt.
I wonder
lately.
where on the performance spectrum you think diet will move, because I think cyclical keto will be a thing. Like, I understand you can't be full keto and do explosive type of sports, combat sports is one of them. Like, dude, you need the sixth gear. You have to have explosiveness to you. If you go full keto, you're going to be flat. You're going to flatten out. You know, if you're running ultra marathon style, great, dude. You can have a steak, some fatty meal, and just go for hours. Don't need to replenish like those carb runners do. They have to be at the aid stations every few hours to replenish, or having the energy chews. Like, if you're full on keto, dude, you can have some like avocado oil with a steak or whatever. Like Zach Bitter, I think he eats a steak the night before a race. Dude doesn't replenish like basically the whole time.
Wow.
And all the other runners that are on like the carb diets, they're like, glycogen, I need more glycogen. I have to stop and eat. And it's just,
God, that is curious, because I follow Courtney Dowalter.
Mm-hmm.
She's amazing.
Beast.
And she's been on Joe Rogan's podcast, talked about her diet. He's like, so what do you eat? She goes, everything. I have a beer. I'll have some waffles, nachos. That's what really makes me wonder if some humans are just special, and then some people are just...
Well, yeah. When I hear that, I go, okay, but what if a nutritionist put her on something, quote, optimized? How much better would she perform? There's no way in hell nachos and beer is good for your performance.
Exactly.
Dude. She just has to be genetically a freak for the sport, you know, and running long distance. Now, what if she really dialed in? Maybe she's just so genetically gifted that you don't need to dial it in, dude. Just like those freaks back in the day, like could pound a beer or two and go run a 5-minute mile, dude. It's like right after pounding it too. Some people, dude, are just crazy.
Yeah. Even that tribe in Mexico, that book, Born to Run. The guy went down there to figure out like why they were able to run 100+ miles just for fun, what they do leading up to it. The night before, they'd party all night. Once a week, they'd party like it's New Year's, and then show up to the starting line and run 100 miles off of like this snake tequila and corn beer. And that was the only thing fueling them. So I do wonder how much it's genetic disposition, how much it's years and years of just doing the same thing to get you dialed in.
Right, acclimation.
But you're right, because we'll never really know. We'll never know.
Do you think so? There'll be like a overarching, like, in general, this is the diet plan, and then genetically you can...
I like to believe eventually we will, because I mean, that's the whole beauty of science. It's forever correcting itself.
Yeah.
And I think that within the next 50 years, I think it will be much more like dialed in.
Optimized way of eating, period.
Absolutely.
And if you have Crohn's disease, if you're this, if you're from this area.
That would be great. Or this is your sport. That you want to do long distance running. You want to do grappling. Because these are different. These are different things, right? Long distance running is almost the complete opposite of grappling.
Right.
Like even like the Diaz brothers who do triathlons, Ironman, you know, they see how much different it is when they're running to when they're grappling. They understand that they can go hand in hand. Endurance is endurance, but it's completely different when you're trying to move a body around than when you're just
maximum effort.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I really hope it gets dialed in eventually. Sooner than later. So maybe we're the guinea pig generation.
Oh yeah.
So we're the
a lot of us had to die, dude, to get here. A lot of people getting. How many people are dying of like obesity, bro? And how much of an issue? Just Corona right now.
Right.
Was such an issue. Corona, obesity. Nobody talked about metabolic health and what that meant, dude. It's just like, oh, everybody stay inside, get your shots, you know, isolate, blah, blah. And it's just like everybody dying had the vitamin D problems. Everybody had dietary issues. Basically, if you don't have enough vitamin D, well, it's a dietary issue. You're staying in the house all day. You didn't get enough sun. You know, you had like low zinc. You had other stuff. And it's just like, dude, when you put nothing but processed carbs, sugar, people are drinking liters of Coke, Pepsi, Sprite, whatever it is with all
energy
that sugar.
Drinks.
Energy drinks, dude.
Pre-workout.
And then you're having your Hot Pocket meals. And then it's like, dude, it's just crap after crap after crap. Your body over the years gets fat, gets frail, gets weak. And then a virus like Corona kills you. Because it's like, dude, look at the state your body's in. But nobody wants to talk about that. It's all of a sudden like Corona's so deadly and all this. It's like, yeah, for our generation, because we're so out of shape, dude. Almost anything could kill a bunch of us nowadays. We're just frail, dude. Metabolically unhealthy. Like, how many people do you see? God, when you go, it's a big problem in America, but when you go to the store, dude, and you see like a super obese person on the motorized cart.
Absolutely.
And their cart is filled with junk food. And I try not to judge, but when I look at that, I'm just disgusted, dude. That's just honest. I'm like, I'm looking at this guy that's like 400 pounds, can't even walk, has to use a motorized cart, dude, and you're filling your shit up with like candy, dude, chips, sodas. And I'm like, what are you doing?
Right. And I wonder at what point did they fall into a cycle, into the trap of big corporation? Because that's ultimately what it is sometimes. I really believe that a lot of people want to do the right things. They want to be healthy. But once you've been formed with these habits, these chemicals, what are they saying now about cheese? These fake cheeses, the casein in it is the similar
like Coke addiction.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
To crack, Coke, all these things. It's like, they definitely know there's some body chemistry going on, and they're abusing it as much as possible, and they're getting people hooked on food. And I mean, ultimately, we all have those cravings. We all have them. We all want the sweetest candy.
Right. And I feel bad for the kids that are born into, like, you know, have obese parents, and then those parents' dietary habits are just so shit. So this kid has like zero chance, dude. And then you see like the little 7-year-old, 6-year-old, 5-year-old, and they're just blown up.
I've seen that. Yeah.
And you just go, what the hell, dude, are the parents doing?
Right.
And how does that kid now grow into an adult? The self-confidence and esteem issues you get from being like that your entire life, and then you probably put it in your head that I'm big boned, or maybe this is just how my family is, and your dietary choices have been shit since you're born.
I wonder how much too. Yeah, like how do you change that? Because your body is now grown up and knowing that
this is all you've ever gotten, dude. So it's like, how does that person break the cycle?
Right.
This is existence for you. Like, holy hell, dude. You're now 19 years old, knocking on 400 pounds. Your parents are the same, 400 plus pounds, whatever, insane number. And you're just like, I don't know, this is my life, dude.
Yeah.
What do you do? I don't know.
Exactly.
That's a nutty one.
Hopefully you get, how are you going to get out of that if you don't have the right information when you have so many diets to choose from?
And then think of the extreme opposite of that. The vegan guy whose kids he tried to put on the vegan diet. So then you get sold into the ideology. You are, you know, informed, and then you go, all right, I'm going to feed my kids this specific diet. And now we know it causes problems because you need supplementation just to live off of it. Like, that should be a key number one problem to a lot of people, is like, you can't really do a vegan diet without some supplements.
That's very true.
You're going to die. Yeah, you're going to die eventually.
You got to have your B12.
Right.
You got to have these different things.
So how do you combat that as a vegan? Oh, yeah, I could just supplement. Well, okay. But naturally, though, is that good for you? And then now you want to put your kids on it? So you read all the stories. I've heard of them too, like memory issues are another one. Like, vegans are predisposed to getting Alzheimer's and dementia at much higher rates than meat eaters. And that was, I think, a recent one that I read. And I was like, holy hell. And the number was very high.
So I don't know about you, but my goal just as a kid, it's just a weird thing I had as a kid and even to this day, but I've always wanted to break triple digits in my age.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to be 100 plus, and not just 100 plus, but like that
healthy,
I'm there, coherent, everything's happening. So if you look around the world at who has the highest average lifespans, it's always these blue areas, these little zones, the blue zones, these islands. And they looked at what those people were eating, and it's just traditional fruits, vegetables, meat, but everything is a very nice balance to it. Okay. Yeah. So they're eating clean, non-GMO'd, whatever you want to consider GMO'd, you know what I mean? No pesticides, no herbicides. They're growing everything the way that it has been for generations. They're eating their meats.
Meat heavy diet too. Like, proportion to your plate, there's a lot of meat. And then fruits, some veggies. That's it. They didn't really do grains. They don't really do beans. You know, legumes.
The average lifespan was like 100 years old.
Yeah,
like everyone lives to be 100. One in Japan.
There's like one in Greece or something. There's one. They're all over the world, but they all basically had like ruminating animals as a major part. Fish, you know, olive oils, whatever, and then, you know, veggies here and there. A lot of fruit, and dude, it was varied enough, and it was always, like you say, cooked fresh at home. There's no supermarket, dude, no grocery to get your stuff. That you grew it all yourself, basically.
So I'm a believer in that. I mean, that to me is enough science right there that you have people from 100 years ago being 100 years old now. Everyone from that region is doing well, have the lowest rates of obesity, dietary disease, all these things. So no easy answers to this stuff. I know it's hard. I struggle to this day, so I don't want anyone to think that you're alone. Yeah. Everyone struggles. Everyone has those cravings, but I think, you know, one day at a time, one meal at a time is the right approach.
Agreed. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, let's end it there. That's perfect,
Yeah,
guys. I hope
great.
you learned something from two extremes back in the middle, man.
Carnivore and vegan.
Dude.
Back to the middle, back to whole foods.
Exactly.
Cook your own food, my friends. Cook your own food.
100%. All right, guys.
All right, you guys. Have a good one. Take care.
See you later.
Later.